Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here and for the work you've put in all year. My name is Jessica Mendoza, and I will be doing the end of the year PLC meeting. I want today's PLC to be reflective and honest, not just about what went well, but also about what we can improve moving forward. This is a space where we can celebrate growth, analyze data, and think intentionally about our next steps. Before we dive into data, I just want to acknowledge the effort everyone has put into supporting our students this school year. Indeed, it has not been an easy year, but the growth we've seen is meaningful. Today, our focus will be on student outcomes, instructional strategies that made an impact, and areas where we still see gaps. We'll also begin thinking about how we can refine our practices for next year. I want this to be a collaborative conversation where everyone's voice matters. There is a no judgment here. I want this to be a no judgment zone, just growth and reflection. I also want to encourage everyone to be open and transparent as we reflect on our practices. Honest conversations are what lead to meaningful growth, both individually and as a team. As we review our data, let's keep our students at the center of every discussion and decision we make. Think about not only what the data shows, but also the stories behind those numbers. Now, I want you to think what worked well for your students and where did they struggle the most. It's important that we identify patterns across classrooms so we can respond collectively and effectively. I also want us to consider how our instructional choices influence these outcomes. This is an opportunity to recognize strengths that we can build on moving forward. At the same time, it's a chance to identify areas where we can be more intentional in our planning and instruction. Remember, growth doesn't happen overnight, but through consistent reflection and action together, we can use this time to strengthen our practices and better support all learners next year. Now, looking at our data, we can see some clear trends. In reading, for example, we saw growth in overall comprehension, which is good, but we still have gaps in academic vocabulary and written responses. In math, students showed improvement in procedural skills, which is great as well, but struggled more with problem solving and explaining their thinking. Now, I want us to think about what this tells us about our instruction. Think, what patterns are you noticing? As we analyze this data, I want us to look beyond surface level results. Think about the instructional practices that may have contributed to these outcomes. Consider how consistency across classrooms may have impacted student performance. We should also reflect on how often students were given opportunities to practice these skills. Another important factor is how we scaffolded instruction for students who struggled. Did we provide enough support or were there gaps in our approach? Think about it. It is also worth considering how frequently we monitored progress throughout the year. Ongoing data collection can help us catch these gaps earlier than anticipated. I want us to think about how student engagement played a role in these results. When students are engaged, they are more likely to retain and apply what they learn. Let's use this data as a tool to guide our next steps, not just a measure of performance.
I noticed that my students improved in the fluency and basic comprehension, but they still struggled when asked to explain their answers. Even when they understood the text, they had a hard time putting their thoughts into words. And I think this connects to what we saw earlier in the year with academic vocabulary. They just don't have the language to express their thinking clearly. And I also noticed that some of my students were more confident during discussions than in writing. This makes me think that they understand the content but struggle to transfer that understanding onto paper. I tried incorporating more writing opportunities, but I think I could have been more consistent. Looking back, I realized that I could have modeled responses more frequently, and I also think that I could have provided them with more structured supports, especially for my struggling students. There were times when students needed more guidance than I initially provided. And I also noticed that there were times when I used visuals or examples and the students performed better. This shows me that they benefit from multiple ways of accessing the content. And I think I need to be more intentional about differentiating my instruction. Overall, this has helped me reflect on how I can better support all the learners moving forward. And I want to focus on building both their confidence and their skills.
I agree with that. Across classrooms, we saw similar patterns. Students can do the work, but they struggle to explain it, especially in writing. That tells us we need to be more intentional about how we teach language, not just content. It also suggests that we need more structured opportunities for students to practice explaining their thinking. In addition to that, I observed that classrooms with consistent routines saw stronger student outcomes. When students know what to expect, they're able to focus more on learning. I also noticed that teachers who modeled their thinking had greater student success. This shows the importance of making our thinking visible to students. Another trend I saw was that students benefited from repeated practice over time. One time exposure to a skill was not enough for mastery. I also think we need to consider how we provide feedback to students. Timely, specific feedback can make a significant difference in student growth. We should also reflect on how we are using formative assessments. These assessments should guide our instruction and not just measure performance. Additionally, I believe we can strengthen alignment between our instruction and assessments. This will ensure that students are fully prepared for what is expected of them. These are all the areas we can continue to build on next year.
That is a really important point. So let's take some time to reflect on our instruction this year. What strategies do you feel had the greatest impact on student learning? I want you to think about specific practices that led to noticeable growth, increased engagement, or stronger understanding in your classroom. Now, consider what worked well, not just for the small group of students, but across different levels of learners, including our struggling students and those who needed more support. It's also important to reflect on which strategies helped close learning gaps and supported students in moving from basic understanding to deeper thinking. Think about moments when students were able to clearly explain their thinking, apply their learning, or even show confidence in their response. As you reflect, try to identify what made these strategies effective. Was the level of structure you provided, the consistency in how you implemented them, or the supports you gave students along the way? I also want you to consider how often those strategies were used and whether repetition played a role in student success. Sometimes it's not just the strategy itself, but how consistently it's applied that makes the difference. Think about how students responded. Were they more engaged, more willing to participate, or more independent in their work? Additionally, reflect on how these strategies supported different student groups. Think, did certain approaches work better for your English language learners, also known as EOLs, or special education students, also known as SPEDs? Where were there strategies that helped all students access the content more effectively? I also want us to think about how these practices aligned with our campus goals and expectations. As we share, let's be as specific as possible so we can identify patterns along classrooms and grade levels. This will help us determine which practices we want to continue strengthening and possibly expand campus wide. Ultimately, our main goal is to build on what worked, refine what needs improvement, and use these insights to guide our planning for next year. This reflection is not just about looking back, but about being intentional with how we move forward to better support all learners, not just a specific group. It's important that we're able to get to every single student, especially those that are having difficulties.
For me, small group instruction made the biggest difference in my classroom this year. When I work with students in smaller groups, I was able to really focus on their specific needs and adjust my instruction in the moment. It allowed me to slow down, clarify misunderstandings, and provide more individualized support. I noticed that students were more willing to ask questions in a small group setting, which helped me better understand where they were struggling. And it also gave me the opportunity to provide immediate feedback, which made a big impact on their learning. I also saw improvement when I used sentence stems consistently during instruction. And at the beginning of the year, many of my students were struggling to even start their responses, especially when asked to explain their thinking. Providing sentence stems gave them a clear starting point and helped reduce some of that hesitation. Over time, I noticed that students became more confident and we were able to expand on their responses. They started using academic language more naturally, even beyond the sentences stems I had provided. Another thing I observed was that students who typically struggle were more engaged now than when they had the structure in the first place. It gave them a sense of direction and made the task feel more manageable. I also found that combining small group instruction with sentence stems was especially effective. In small groups, I could model how to use the stems and guide the students as they practice. This helped reinforce their understanding and build their confidence even more. Looking back, I think consistency played a big role in the success of these strategies. The more I used them, the more comfortable the students became. And I do think I could have been even more intentional about using these strategies across all the content areas. There were times when I used them in reading, but not as much as in writing or other subjects. Moving forward, I would like to be more consistent and purposeful with both small group instruction and structured responses. Overall, I saw a clear growth in my students, especially in their ability to express their thinking, and I believe these strategies were a big part of that.
I also saw strong implementation of questioning strategies across classrooms this year, which was a great improvement from where we started. Teachers were consistently moving beyond simple recall questions and incorporating more open ended questions into their instruction. This encouraged students to think more deeply about the content and engage in meaningful discussions. I noticed that students were given more opportunities to explain their reasoning rather than just provide short answers. This shift helped promote a deeper level of understanding and allowed teachers to better assess student thinking. However, I do think we still need to push further into higher order thinking. While there was growth, many questions still remained at a surface level or did not fully challenge students to analyze, evaluate, or create. We want to ensure that students are not only understanding the content but also applying it in more complex ways. This includes asking questions that require students to justify their answers, make connections, and think critically about different perspectives. Another area we can strengthen is student discourse. While teachers are asking stronger questions, we need to increase opportunities for students to engage in meaningful conversations with one another. Students should be talking about their thinking, responding to their peers, and building on each other's ideas. This kind of interaction helps deepen understanding and supports language development, especially for ELL students. I also think we can be more intentional about structuring these discussions, providing sentence stems, clear expectations, and opportunities for collaboration can help ensure that all students are participating. In some cases, we still see the same students responding, while others remain passive. Increasing student to student interaction will help address this. Overall, there has been strong progress in questioning strategies, but the next step is to refine these practices to promote deeper thinking and stronger student discourse. By continuing to build on this foundation, we can create more opportunities for students to actively engage in their learning and develop critical thinking skills.
Surely that aligns with what I've seen during walkthroughs across classrooms this year. There has definitely been noticeable growth in student engagement and in the use of questioning strategies by teachers. Students are more involved in lessons, and we are seeing more opportunities for them to respond and participate. However, we still need to strengthen how students communicate their understanding of the content. It's not just about what they know, but how effectively they are able to explain and justify their thinking. In many cases, students can arrive at the correct answer, but they struggle to articulate the process they used to get there. This becomes especially evident in written responses, where students often provide minimal or incomplete explanations. I also noticed that some students rely heavily on one word answers or need additional prompting to explain their thinking. This indicates that while comprehension may be present, the language and structure needed to express that understanding are still developing. We need to be more intentional about teaching students how to communicate their thinking, not just expecting them to do it independently. This includes modeling responses, providing structured supports such as sentence stems, and creating consistent expectations across the classrooms. When students are given the tools and opportunities to practice, they become more confident and capable in expressing their ideas. I also think this is closely tied to equity and access. Students who have stronger language skills are often able to demonstrate their understanding more easily, while others may struggle even if they understand the content. By strengthening how we support student communication, we can ensure that all students have the opportunity to show what they know. Moving forward, we need to focus on creating more opportunities for students to both speak and write about their thinking in a structured way. This will definitely help bridge the gap between understanding and expression. If we can strengthen this area, we will not only improve student performance, but also build their confidence and independence as learners. Now, let's shift our focus to areas where we are still seeing gaps in student learning. Based on our data and observations throughout the year, what do you feel are our biggest instructional needs moving forward? I want us to think beyond just the surface level and really analyze where students are still struggling. Consider both academic performance and the skills students need to be successful across content areas. What patterns are we consistently seeing, and where are students not yet meeting expectations? As you reflect, think about how these gaps connect to our instructional practices. Are there specific areas where we need more consistency across classrooms? Are there strategies that we may not be implementing as effectively or as frequently as we should? It is also important to consider how these gaps impact different groups of students, particularly our English language learners and special education students. I also want us to think about how we can be more intentional in addressing these needs moving forward. Identifying the gaps in just the first step, the goal, and the goal is to use this information, to guide our planning and instruction. What do our students need from us next year in order to be more successful? How can we adjust our practices to better support them? Let's be honest and specific in our responses so that we can clearly define our priorities. This will help us focus our efforts and ensure that we are targeting the areas that will have the greatest impact on student learning.
I would say that academic vocabulary and writing are definitely two of our biggest instructional needs moving forward. I've noticed that many of my students struggle not because they don't understand the content, but because they don't have the language to express their thinking clearly. When asked to respond, they often give incomplete answers or rely on very simple language. This becomes especially evident when they are required to write incomplete sentences or explain their reasoning in detail. Students need more consistent support in learning how to structure their responses. They need to understand what a complete answer looks like and how to build on their ideas. I also think we need to be more intentional about teaching academic vocabulary, not just introducing it. Students need multiple opportunities to hear, use, and apply vocabulary in meaningful ways. Without that, and the repetition, they tend to forget or avoid using those words altogether. Another important factor is consistency across classrooms. If students are only exposed to certain strategies in one class, it becomes harder for them to develop those skills. However, if all the teachers are using the similar approaches, such as sentence stems or structured responses, students will become more comfortable and confident. This kind of consistency can make a big difference in student growth. I also think we need to provide more opportunities for students to practice writing and speaking about their thinking. The more they practice, the more confident they will become. Overall, focusing on academic vocabulary, structured writing, and consistency will help us better support our students and improve their ability to communicate their understanding.
I agree. We also need to place a stronger focus on structured student responses and increasing opportunities for meaningful discussion in the classroom. While writing is important, students also need consistent opportunities to verbally express their thinking. When students talk through their ideas, it helps them process information at a deeper level and build confidence in their understanding. I've noticed that in classrooms where discussion is more intentional, students are more engaged and willing to take academic risks. Students need to talk about their thinking more, not just write it, because oral language is a key foundation of comprehension and writing development. This is especially important for our English language learners, who benefit greatly from opportunities to practice academic language in a supportive setting. We should be creating structured opportunities for students to engage in discussions, such as think, pair, share, small group conversations, or guided discussions. It is also important that these discussions are purposeful and supported. Providing sentence stems and clear expectations can help ensure that all students are able to participate, not just those who are already confident. Without the structure, we often see the same students doing most of the talking, while others remain passive. Additionally, increasing student discourse allows teachers to better assess understanding in real time. When students explain their thinking out loud, it gives us insight into their thought process and helps us identify misconceptions. I also think that building culture where students feel comfortable sharing ideas is essential. When students feel safe to participate, they are more likely to engage and grow. Overall, if we are intentional about increasing structured discussions, we can strengthen both comprehension and communication skills. This will ultimately support students in becoming more confident and independent learners.
Yes. And I think this also connects directly to equity in our classrooms. If we are not consistent in how we support students, some students will inevitably fall behind when expectations and strategies vary from classroom to classroom. It creates gaps in student learning and uh, access. We need to ensure that all students are receiving the same level of support, regardless of which classroom they are in. Equity is not just about giving all students the same thing, but about providing the specific supports they need to be successful. For some students, especially our ELL and special education populations, this means more structured opportunities to practice language and express their thinking. If those supports are not consistently in place, those students are at a greater disadvantage. I also think consistency helps build student confidence. When students know what to expect and are familiar with the structures being used, they are more likely to participate and take risks. On the other hand, when expectations are unclear or inconsistent, students may become hesitant or disengaged. This is exactly why it is so important that we are aligned as a campus in our instructional practices. If we are all using similar strategies, such as sentence stems, structured discussions, and even academic vocabulary routines, we can better support all learners. It is it, it also allows students to build on their skills over time rather than having to adjust to different expectations in each classroom. Moving forward, we need to be intentional about creating equitable learning experiences for all students. This means not only identifying what students need, but also ensuring what those supports are consistently implemented. By doing this, we can help close gaps and ensure that every student has the opportunity to succeed. So, thinking ahead to next year, what are some instructional priorities we want to focus on as a campus? I want us to be intentional about identifying a few key areas that will have the greatest impact on student learning. As we reflect on this year, it's important that we take what we've learned and use it to guide our planning moving forward. Think about the gaps we discussed as well as the strategies that showed the most success. What do our students need from us next year in order to continue growing? I also want us to consider how we can create more consistency across classrooms. When students experience the same expectations and supports, they are more likely to build and retain those skills over time. We should also think about how we can make these priorities manageable for teachers. If we focus on too many things at once, it can become overwhelming and difficult to implement effectively. Instead, we want to be focused, strategic, and intentional. Another important piece is sustainability. The strategies we choose should be something that can be consistently implemented throughout the year, not just for a short period of time. We also need to think about how we will support teachers in implementing these priorities. This includes professional development, coaching, and ongoing collaboration. Ultimately, our goal is to create a plan that is both effective and realistic, as mentioned before, so that we can see long term improvement in student outcomes.
I think we should focus on consistent use of sentence stems and academic vocabulary across all classrooms. That would really help students build those skills over time and become more confident in expressing their thinking. I've seen how effective sentence stems can be when they are used consistently, especially for those students who struggle to start their responses. They provide structure and help guide students in using complete sentences and academic language. I also think that academic vocabulary needs to be reinforced more frequently and intentionally. Consistency across classrooms is also very important. If all teachers are using similar strategies, students will become more familiar with expectations and feel more confident in their responses. This will help reduce confusion and allow students to focus more on the content. And I also think that the consistency will support our struggling learners the most, as they benefit from clear and predictable structures. Moving forward, I would like to be more intentional about incorporating these strategies daily. I also think it would be helpful to have shared resources or examples that we can use across the classrooms. Overall, focusing on sentence stems and academic vocabulary will help strengthen both comprehension and communication skills for all of our students.
I agree, and I think those priorities are a strong starting point. In addition to that, we could implement more structured writing routines and increase opportunities for student discussion. Writing and speaking are both critical components of learning. They should be integrated consistently across all content areas. When students are given regular opportunities to write and talk about their thinking, they are able to process information more deeply. Structured writing routines can help students understand how to organize their thoughts and provide complete responses. This includes modeling how to write responses, providing sentence frames, and giving students opportunities to practice with support. Over time, students will become more independent and confident in their writing. Increasing student discussions is also very important. Students need opportunities to share their ideas, listen to others, and build on each other's thinking. This not only supports comprehension, but also builds communication skills. We should be intentional about incorporating structured discussion strategies, such as think, pair, share, or small group conversations. I also think it's important that we provide clear expectations for both writing and discussion. Students need to know what a strong response looks like and how to participate effectively. Additionally, we should consider how we can support teachers in implementing these routines consistently. This may include providing examples, modeling strategies, and offering coaching support. By focusing on structured writing in student discourse, we can help students develop the skills they need to continue their understanding more effectively. This will ultimately lead to stronger academic outcomes across all content areas.
I agree with the both of you, and I think these priorities align well with the needs we've identified through our data and observations. I also think we need to build in a more intentional small group instruction and let ensure that it is data driven. Small group instruction allows teachers to target a specific student needs and provide more individualized support. When groups are based on data, instruction becomes more focused and effective. We need to ensure that teachers are using data regularly to guide their instructional decisions. This includes identifying student strengths and areas of need, and then adjusting instruction accordingly. Small group instruction should not be an additional activity, but a purposeful part of daily instruction. Additionally, we should plan professional development around these areas so that teachers feel supported. Teachers need to see what these strategies look like in practice and have opportunities to apply them. This includes modeling, guided practice, and follow up support. We should also incorporate uh, coaching cycles to provide ongoing support and feedback. Another important aspect is collaboration. Teachers should have opportunities to discuss these strategies, shared ideas, and reflect on their practice during PLCs. This will definitely help build consistency and strengthen implementation across classrooms. We also need to be mindful of pacing and expectations. It's important that we introduce these priorities in a manageable way so that teachers can implement them effectively. Over time, we can build on these strategies and continue to refine our own practices. Ultimately, our goal is to create a system that supports both teachers and students. By focusing on academic vocabulary, structured responses, student discourse, and data driven instruction, we can address the gaps we've identified and improve student outcomes. I am confident that with a clear plan and continued collaboration, we can make meaningful progress next year. Now, let's take a moment to outline some clear action steps moving forward so we can ensure we are aligned as a campus. Based on our discussion, one of our main priorities will be to focus on academic vocabulary instruction across all content areas. We want to be intentional about not only introducing vocabulary, but also providing multiple opportunities for students to use and apply those words in meaningful ways. Another key action step is to implement consistent use of sentence stems and structured responses across classrooms. This will help provide students with the support they need to communicate their thinking more effectively. When students are exposed to these structures consistently, they become more confident and independent in their responses. We also want to increase opportunities for student discussion and collaboration. This means creating structured opportunities for students to engage in meaningful conversations, share ideas, and build on each other's thinking. These discussions should be purposeful and supported so that all students are actively participating. In addition, we will use data to guide small group instruction. Teachers should be regularly analyzing student data to identify specific areas of need and then using that information to form targeted groups. Small group instruction should be intentional and focused on addressing those gaps. Another important component is providing professional development and coaching support. We want to ensure that teachers feel confident in implementing these strategies. This may include modeling lessons, providing resources, and offering ongoing feedback and support throughout the school year. We will also continue to use PLC time to reflect on implementation, share strategies, and monitor student progress. This will help us stay aligned and make adjustments as needed. The goal is to create consistency across classrooms while still allowing teachers to adapt strategies to meet the needs of their students. Overall, these action steps are designed to address the gaps we identified while building on the strengths we already have in place. Does that sound aligned with what we discussed? And is there anything else you would like to add or clarify?
Yes, I think those are clear and manageable next steps. I really like that we are focusing on a few key priorities instead of trying to do too many things at once. This will make it easier to implement these strategies consistently throughout the school year. And I also appreciate the focus on academic vocabulary and sentence stems because I've seen how much those support the students in my classroom. I think having consistency across all the classrooms will make a big difference for all of our students. When they are exposed to the same expectations and strategies, they become more comfortable and confident. I also like that we are including opportunities for collaboration, both for students and teachers. That will help us learn from each other and continue to improve our practices. I also think the focus on small group instruction will be very beneficial. Being able to target specific students' needs will help us address the gaps more effectively. The support through professional development and coaching is also important, especially for making sure that we are implementing these strategies correctly. Overall, I feel confident that these steps are realistic and will have a positive impact on the student learning.
I agree. This gives us a strong and focused direction moving forward. I think what stands out to me is the emphasis on consistency and intentionality in our instruction. When we are all aligned in our approach, it creates a more cohesive learning experience for students. I also appreciate that these action steps are directly connected to the data we reviewed. That ensures that we are addressing actual students' needs rather than making assumptions. The focus on academic vocabulary, structured responses, and student discourse will really help build both comprehension and communication skills. I also think the use of data to guide small group instruction is critical. It allows teachers to be more strategic and responsive to student needs. Providing professional development and coaching support will be key to successful implementation. Teachers need opportunities to see these strategies in action and receive feedback as they apply them. I also think ongoing PLC discussions will help us monitor progress and make necessary adjustments. Overall, I feel confident that these steps will help us build on the progress that we made this year and continue improving student outcomes.
Okay. Now, before we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to sincerely thank you both for your dedication and hard work throughout this year. The growth we've seen in our students is not by chance. It is a direct result of your commitment, consistency, and the effort you put into your instruction every single day. I know this year has come with its challenges, but your perseverance and focus on student success have truly made a difference. As we move into next year, I am confident that we can continue building on this progress. We have now a clearer understanding of our students' needs as well as the strategies that are making the greatest impact. This puts us in a strong position to be even more intentional and effective moving forward. I want to remind you that this is a continuous process. Growth does not happen overnight, but through ongoing reflection, collaboration, and adjustment, just like we did today, we are able to see some growth. We will continue to support each other along the way, whether that is through POCs, coaching, or simply sharing ideas and strategies. You are not doing this work alone, we are a team. I also appreciate your honesty and openness during today's discussion. These conversations are not always easy, but they are necessary for growth. Your willingness to reflect on your practices and share your insights show a strong commitment to both your students and your professional development. As we close, I encourage you to take some time to reflect on your own practices. Think about what worked well this year. What would you like to improve, and how can you apply what we discussed moving forward? Even small adjustments can lead to meaningful change over time. Please know that your work is valued and greatly appreciated. You are making a lasting impact on your students, and that matters more than anything. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy a well deserved break, and thank you again for everything you do for our students.